I love retro sci-fi vehicles. Impossible machines designed in the past for a future that hasn't arrived. From a young age, I was gripped by artistic designs of motorcycles, land-to-sea vehicles, and that flying car that always seemed to be just 20 years away. Well, this week, let's combine my love of weird sci-fi transportation and tabletop miniatures. Welcome to ConjuredCraft. My name is Taryn. Let's get started. While hunting for trinkets last year, I stumbled upon a Gachapon kids toy that came in this perfect little sphere. I was equal parts interested in the build your own dinosaur inside, which ended up in a Turnip 28 kit bash, but I also knew that the sphere would be a fun project. Real-world tanks are boxy, angular, and riveted to high heaven, largely because we are forced to comply with physics. But this isn't a real tank, and I answer to no laws of the universe. The name Retrofuturism didn't come about until the 80s, but it's been a creative style of science fiction since the 1950s, when, as a people, we started to imagine life in space, a depiction of tomorrow made in yesteryear. With that in mind, we need to keep the silhouette simple, with as few obvious connection points as possible. To help with that profile, I'm going to build the tank tread directly into the base of the sphere. A trick for a cut like this is to drill some holes along your markings and then score the plastic carefully with a knife. This way you can remove material and keep a mostly even shape. The sphere is a bit of a challenge because I can slip and not only blemish the plastic, but I can also hurt myself if I'm not careful. Thankfully though, I made it through unscathed, even if our hole wasn't completely perfect. Now, if I was a professional, I would have sheets of styrene plastic for something like this, but I'm a hobbyist and an excellent cook, so I saved the plastic from my tofu containers, and I'm going to use that to cover up the edges. Just like before, I'm measuring and marking my part, drilling some holes in the corners, and then scoring, cutting, and gluing our trim for the treads. Now I decided there needed to be an access panel for a mechanic or engineer to work on the engine, as this is a tank after all. In my first attempt, I'm using more tofu plastic for the door and some old guitar strings as the handle, and for some reason unknown to me now, the hinges as well. I know it, you know it, this door is a bit of a mess. So here's a quick look at round 2. Besides the scale being better and the handle in a more fitting location, I used some embossed numbers from the tofu plastic to give it some markings. With that out of the way, let's talk about some other details. Using a part of a soap pump mechanism and a bootleg casting of a miniature vent, I'm creating an exhaust port for our tank before moving on to adding the lid from a bottle of oil as the main hatch for the crew to get inside. My design philosophy for this project is that practical elements should add to the overall concept. Impossible vehicle of the future. I want it to look like a sphere overall, but it would be a pretty dull project for me and a boring video for you if I just slapped a barrel onto a ball and said please like and subscribe. The details I'm adding need to contribute to the story of this piece, like a rear window for the support crew to look out of. I have an assortment of pump bottle components from makeup bottles and moisturizers that give me a lot of options for the barrel. But to give it something to mount to, I also have this toy car with a rear window that will become our windshield. Oh, and as an absolute bonus, I can take the steering wheel and put it on the hatch of our tank, completing its transformation to a big tomato. Back to the barrel, I'm gluing some parts together and filling in a recess that I don't particularly love with epoxy clay. Then with more tofu plastic and some super glue, we can finish the cannon for our tank. From here, I need to spend some time filling in the gaps with any leftover epoxy clay and building up a box around the main gun. This is absolutely an exercise in patience, precision, and pondering. People have always looked to the future and wondered what clothes we might wear, how we'll communicate with one another, and honestly, if people will still even be around. I take comfort in these imaginative and unconventional vehicles, and really just the genre of science fiction as a whole, because it's an anticipation of tomorrow. Yes, a lot of sci-fi can be dystopian and what I like to call hyperspace capitalism, but that doesn't mean we should just stop dreaming of a future. Whether you're a scientist, engineer, or an artist who just likes to make silly little videos for the internet. So if you have some sci-fi that inspires you, I'd love to hear about it down below. But with that, it's a new day and I can't put this off any longer. I need to figure out how to get this tank to rotate. All of this hinges on a wheel from a dishwasher that I appropriated from my previous landlord. It has a nice, smooth rotation and a way for me to mount it to the base of the sphere. I also have a spray paint bottle cover that fits perfectly on the wheel without obstructing anything. And then building up the base with some thick paper card, I can drill and pin a piece of wire down the middle as some extra reinforcement so I don't just shear the top half of this thing off immediately. Despite saving every plastic bottle cap that I have ever been subjected to, I didn't have one that was a perfect fit for the top. And so I began my journey to Valhalla. In the immortal words of Core Geek, I sand, I die, I sand again. After creating a wasteland on my desk, I quickly glued together this flashlight detail to mount parallel to the eventual cannon and added on an antenna array so our tank can stay in comms on the battlefield. From there, the epoxy clay on our barrel has had some time to cure so I could pin and glue it onto the sphere, and using some more guitar string, I added in some handrails for the operators to get into the tank. And finally, our tank was ready to be primed for paint. I'm 1,000 miles away from home, just waiting for a train. As slick as this thing looks with a coat of paint, there are some places where I had superglue spill and some rough edges that needed touching up. To stay in the retro chrome future, I can't hide my work under copious layers of rust. So it's another round of sanding and priming to clean this tank up before moving on to paint. I know it won't be perfect, but I'll still put in my best effort with the tools I have on hand. Depending on which thumbnail I have up, you've probably already realized that what I've made is a Tonk. Tonks is a wargame created by the dapper Ben from Apocrypha Now. But since it's very unlikely that I'll actually use it in a game, I've decided to make it a more impressive display. I started digging through the back catalog of Popular Science, which is one of my favorite resources on the internet, but especially to look at some retro sci-fi vehicles. I modified my own cover in GIMP using the style from the 1930s. The box for the display is all just recycled cardboard because I wanted to keep this project hobby neutral. While building the display, I was thinking about the paint, and looking at old copies of Pop Sci, there's a pretty common theme for what the artists thought the future would look like, and the future was red. It is truly a crafting curse to have to repaint something in the color it already was. And I'll be the first to admit that painting this tank red comes with the inherent risk of it looking like a tomato again. But between garish death tomato and rusty ball bearing, I'll take garish anytime. I ripped up some sponge to get a very quick and believable base coat down, which leaves these natural shadows and grimy spots under some details, and I really liked that effect, so I decided to leave it. Thanks for hanging out with me today as I celebrate what I'm calling Sci-Fi Summer. If you want to participate, just make something over the summer that's sci-fi related and share it online to spread those good sci-fi vibes. If you'd like to fight against our overlords and the corporatization of media, or just like what I do and want to support me, the best way is to check me out over on Patreon, where you can enjoy a behind-the-scenes look at what I'm up to, bonus content, and enjoy ad-free videos before anyone else in the cyberverse. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Oh Lord, a minute.